Hey, everybody, welcome in. Welcome to True Great Crime. I am your host, Mama Gritty. My goodness, it's been so long since I've sat down to kind of get back with you guys and just, go over all of my thoughts about a lot of stuff because I really have had a lot of time to digest so much information. Um, and just thinking about this in a totality perspective. Um, and I've been watching, everything that's going on. Obviously, everybody is really just been recently going over all of these different interviews that have been conducted with Jerry Holman. And man, there's a lot that I want to talk about, a lot that I want to say. Um, because I felt kind of irritated with the entire ordeal when it came to Mr. Holman's interviews. Um, hey, Jenny, welcome in. Good to see you. Big JD, Donnie, Pitbull, thank you guys so much for coming in to show your support. Hi, Salty Sleuth Investigates. Um, oh my gosh. So I kind of wanted to just talk about the different interviews that have happened. Aaron, my friend, and it's like what's so frustrating is that when Mr. Holman did these interviews, he's talking to obviously murder sheets who had been there since the beginning. Then he has his HTC connection here that really didn't go to all of the hearings. As somebody who went to all of the hearings, who sat there, who listened, who took the time to take an extensive amount of notes, I feel like Mr. Holman just completely tried to bamboozle everybody in the public, everybody. And he can get mad, get glad. I don't really give a damn which he has to think about it. To preface this, I would like to say to him, what is it that you can tell me as an individual who sat in the courtroom, who listened to all of the things that were going on, all of the different motions that were argued by the defense, every time that they were shut down, that they were smacked down, that they weren't allowed to speak out all of these truths. I really want to know what answers you have for the public, Mr. Holman, especially when, you have different issues going on, like alternative suspects being related to people who were witnesses during the hearings. Nobody ever talks about that. Nobody ever talks about any of this. So, just, I have some, just some thoughts, but Mr. Holman, it's pretty obvious that we all know that you're pretending. You have no actual facts for the lies that you're defending. Conservatives, not only ones who find it condescending, the real reason you keep circling back to this is because you know it's never ending. Round and round and round you go, dancing like a puppet show. Just a simple yes or no. Thousands watching want to know the truth. But I guess that's too much. Why are we insisting that alternative suspects in this case have absolutely no bearing, no connections, no nothing, ever? No, and he's never spoken at any single press conference. I would not, imagine that would be very good for him. I think that the frustrating thing is in the beginning, the public gave the law enforcement the benefit of the doubt. They gave him the chance, you know. But it seems, trying to intimidate people in the public who start raising their hands and start asking questions, that seems to be a problem. Seems to be a big, huge problem for you, for any other officer that has going on. No less you don't want to talk about the scourge of disgusting officers that have been, arrested up and down this state for, child exploitation cases. You don't want to talk about that. You don't want to talk about all of these different things that you guys got going on. He wants to push the narrative that we are all just silly conspiracy theorists loose. Yes, and that is not the case. Jake says, great points. He's not polished and he can't PS his way out of this. No, you know, just even yesterday, like last night, watching Criminality, she was sharing the new Carroll County Comment uh, article that was written by Miss Amy McCarthy. I think that's her last name, McCarthy. I have a question. You know, while all of this credentialed media stuff was going on, you know, and they were giving all of these like little green passes to the network people. Why didn't Miss McCarthy get a green fucking pass? She's an integral part of the paper. It is their town, however. But why has Allen County been controlling everything that goes in and out of that? Why? Why? What's going on? Why does Jody have so much control and so much like managerial plight over everything? It's a good question, right? You know? So like I said, in the beginning, the public, the ISP and Carroll County came forward and they were like, hey, everybody in the public, we need your help. We need your help. We need you guys to help us find this person, find out who did this, who does this, blah, blah, blah. And then when people started asking questions, you start getting upset and you start trying to bite at the people who are asking the questions and you call them crazy. Well, guess what? I'm not crazy. I sat there in that courtroom the entire time, every hearing that I could go to. And really, I started going because, like, when he got arrested, right, like, and appointed his attorneys in November, you really didn't see any new hearings until, like, that June one, right? All of these people are going to the hearings. They're all coming back. They're having discussions. And I'm watching, like, replays of discussions about what happened in court, and everybody's got some sort of different narrative going on. Nobody is like really on the same page about what's going on. And I'm like, this makes absolutely no sense at all whatsoever. So I had started, I asked if I could go to the hearings or whatever to my husband, and my husband's like, yeah, sure, go ahead, And so that's really when I started to go. I was like, the next hearing, can I go? And he was like, yeah. And that next hearing was that October 19th hearing, the unexpected turn of events. It's like, you know what I mean? Because like you get there and then it's like this unexpected turn of events. Now these defense attorneys have, said that they're not going to work on this case no more. They voluntarily stepped back, but that wasn't the case at all. It took going in front of the Supreme Courts for them to reinstate the defense attorneys. And you just see how much of an accumulative problem this whole situation was. Every hearing you're going, and there's still pieces of discovery and pieces of evidence that haven't been turned over to the defense, and they're asking for this stuff. I'm just so like boggled as to how Jerry could even say that this stuff is not like, the defense was trying to paint this narrative that wasn't true. When in fact, like at the March 18th hearings, it could not have been made more clear. It could not have been made more clear that one of their main suspects at that given point in time was Brad Holder. He was their number one suspect. Come on, man. Abbott and Carter emailing back and forth about this, back and forth. They're notifying the DEA. The FBI was already out there in that area. You know why? Because they were already dealing with drug enforcement issues out there, child trafficking, child pornography issues. All of those things were already going on. Okay. But one thing in the article that was read yesterday that Criminality was talking about, and that kind of bothers me, is that in both of Holman's interviews, he talks about how it was him, Tony Liggett, and was it Hammond that was there that was deciding who was going to take the lead on this case, right? And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm asking myself, I was like, well, is there a reason that like Tony Lesenby is the guy stepping forward? Well, maybe he could be the detective that, that is on the case, that took the lead on this, whatever. But no, I mean, he doesn't override Tobe, right? But, maybe it was a conflict of interest because, Um, the Webbers, the Lieberts, the Sandifers, they're all related. They're all familial related. And Tobe's spouse is a Liebert. I mean, nobody talks about the fact that Kay Weber is the aunt of Patrick Westfall, which, would make Brad Weber his cousin. I'm still at odds and wondering what happened to the whole story that was being peddled during the 3-day hearings about how, the blood that was found in Brad Weber's garage and him going in there and confronting somebody and chasing them out of there. And that narrative was never pushed, but the white van sure was. That was a piece of shit narrative that was really pushed to the max now, wasn't it? Nobody talks about these familial ties. Maybe Tobe didn't take the lead or want to take the lead because direct connection to a familial family member. I don't know. It's a little discerning, in my opinion. Is keeping the narrative going as they did from the start of this. We will see you, Holman. Don't act stupid. We know who you are. No need to prove your ignorance. Yeah, I mean, it really it boggles my mind. It really does. It boggles the crap out of my mind. Something else that and I know I'm like jumping everywhere, like all over the place with this, because again, like I sat down and I listened to the interviews with MS twice. I listened to the interviews with, HTC a couple times, but I do have some really big questions. So like when Holman was interviewing, he talked about a guy who was supposed to be a blood spatter expert, Jason Page, that had responded to the scene, right? Why didn't Jason Page testify as, the blood spatter expert? Why did they go to seek Pat Cicero, and his expertise? Who was going to take the lead? It must have been a big discussion. Exactly, Salty. It had to have been a huge discussion. Huge, right? And then we look at like all of this, because that's like 3 families. That's a lot of like land, right? And you have to think the land that surrounds it, the area where the girls were found, like Ron Logan. Okay. So like there's 3 families, like that whole like little embankment of land is owned by all of these people with these familial ties, the ties that bind, right? So like, I guess another question that I would have for Mr. Holman is, why would your first impression and thoughts be that there would not be a lot of witnesses out at the woods, like in this area, like while this is going on? When at the beginning of all of this, like it was probably being stated that there was like numerous kids out there that the girls had went to school with, or that Kelsey had went to school with. Like all of these people are out there, they're actively, out there, whatever. The girls go missing, the search and rescue gets called in, you know what I mean? And I find it so frustrating, because like even the firefighter dude, Darren Stratton, in the Down the Hill podcast, he doesn't even talk about going out to the area to help search for the girls until about 9:30ish at night. And then he says, they had to stop a little after midnight, right? In my opinion, this PR campaign is desperately trying to prevent the coming annulment of the verdict from ruining each and every one of them. I agree. Did Holman at the time of have the power to offer the service of his agency? He's taking credit for it, but maybe I got that wrong. He mentions being there early. Why is that not important to him? Yeah, actually, he did have that, because he was, let me pull this up because I did write it down. So he was in charge of like the different area, like the district areas and stuff, because he talked about that in his interview with Murder Sheets. So he was in the position, like, and he says that he had worked with Liggett and Lesson B prior. He also was very like happy and, proud to boast to the world that he worked with James Luttrell, which is like that guy's reputation has absolutely been stained and shit on for all of the disrespectful little stuff that he has done with padding cases and being dishonest. But hey, boast that he's the greatest prosecutor in the world if it makes you feel better, bro. You know, um, that day there was a group of guys there the same as both on Shelby. Yeah, like there's a whole list. And see, even like during the searches at one point, they claimed that they had like 600 searchers, during the time of the search, like all, the nighttime search and all that stuff. They were like, oh, we had about 500 to 600 people out there one time, they claimed. But it just, it's so frustrating. All of it, just frustrating. I also wonder, looking at all of my notes and things of that nature, just like early on, at one time, there was a time that Kelsey had went on Gray Hughes' podcast, and she was asking specifically about police corruption, which was kind of strange, kind of like when Becky Patty had asked, could DNA be something viable to convict somebody? Like, those are strange questions. Why would you? I don't, you know what I mean? I don't understand. I don't understand why, there's so much. Yeah. Why wasn't the guy who was there with Shelby interviewed or not interviewed, testifying? Exactly. Pearson. Yeah, they did. They really did claim that, Jen. Like, there's so much. There is so much to this. Like, hold on. I gotta show you guys. I'm not kidding you when I tell you. These are all of the notebooks that I have concerning notes from the beginning of this case. Okay? They are filled with stuff, observations, just crap tons of stuff. Another here, another here, another here, another here, another here. I mean, when I say that this is like a rabbit hole obsession, I'm not kidding you. It's like a rabbit hole obsession, So again, nobody's talking about the familial ties to Lesenby. Nobody's talking about the familial ties to Weber. The ties between Shank and Holder and Huddleston. Those are important names. Those are very important names and ties. Nobody talks about, this drug tie, how people they're using confidential informants, confidential informants to turn the next person in, to do all of this crazy crap that they've got going on. HTC is like, well, Rozzy was talking about that YouTubers were a problem. Yes, they were a huge problem because the state used them to infiltrate into this case, to release information that wasn't supposed to be public. Oh, well, I mean, the leaks, second and third hand, they weren't that bad. Yes, they were. Any of it. All of it was bad. All of it was bad. And I mean, maybe people can be like, oh, well, your thoughts, it could be easy for somebody like her to be critical. Yeah, I've been to prison and maybe you would think that I'm a little bit critical of the cops, but I do have to say, like, I do have family members that are in blue. I do respect the authority and I do respect the law. And I ask that, when you're going to accuse somebody of a crime or you're going to accuse people of doing things, that you have the evidence, that you actually go and investigate that evidence. Time and time again during these court hearings, we heard nothing about, going and actually taking the initiative to go get all of these different points of evidence or things that you're claiming that these people were clear. You didn't go out to try to get anything until you were forced to go get it. And even at that, when you did go get it, what did you do? You pushed to suppress it. You pushed to suppress it. Yeah, Jenny, I've done a lot of work, a lot. Even, down to like, I don't know, like I've learned so much. Like I learned that there were like 4 separate search warrants at Ron Logan's house. You know, I learned about the sweater. I learned about the calendar with the circles on it. I learned that there was a Bible witchcraft that was like a witchcraft Bible that was collected in the search of his home. I did learn that there was somebody on the 13th that was walking down the road on 300 that was bloody, and they were in a tan jacket. It wasn't the person like charged with this crime, but I think that it's really interesting because like I heard that it was like in the afternoonish, you know. Um but I heard a rumor that, you know, there was some evidence to back that up to capture it. So that could be important later on down the road. Um I learned that Ronald Logan was a creep. A creep. We all learned, you know, that he had some proclivities, some extracurriculars that he, you know, liked to uh get in. Hey Arna, welcome. Hi, beautiful Veronica. Um yeah, so like, and I learned like one of Ron Logan's best friends was supposed to be a Sandifer, right? And like I learned, you know, that there were people talking to Libby um before uh like when she's in the car and they're driving and whatever, they know who Libby was on the phone with and exchanging messages with. You guys, they know, they know who it was. And I can't believe that like one of those people was allowed to like even give like an impact statement at the end of all this, you know. um Maybe that's why Sarah lost her stuff on the stand, being gaslit all along. If she did see someone who changed her statement, was there pressure and that on her too? Right. Because she says that she, well, like, okay, so the defense attorneys, when they were questioning her, right, like she insinuates or infers that she said the word bloody, right? Muddy and bloody. But they said that muddy, like there was no bloody. Like, does that make sense? Like, ah, it's crazy. But like what I also came to learn was that like there's like a switching of statements amongst people, or like there's an interweaving of stories throughout this entire ordeal, right? So like parts of one person's statements are taken from another person's statements and then they're interweaved. Okay. For example, when Jerry Holman was on being interviewed and he was asked about what did he think was the reason that the girls had, you know, had this happen. And he's like, well, you know, the girls may have said something to upset somebody, or they may have, you know, whatever, right? That was the exact thing Todd Click said while he was on the stand in court. Literally. Like, did you just decide that you were going to like just grab like a little snippet of Click's explanation, you know? Because thinking about this, if you look at the oldest motives in the book, like the oldest reason for motive, it's either sex, money, or revenge, right? You know? Um, but again, you know, nobody talks about the fact that not only, you know, was the Drug Enforcement Agency out there with the FBI, but there were people that turned state's evidence against others. I mean, God, you have somebody that testified in a federal grand jury case. Yeah, federal grand jury. They got in trouble for stealing. They turned against their own, you know? It just, ugh, it drives me nuts. Nuts, nuts, nuts. They always just stealing sentences off each other because they think it sounds good, right? Aw, you guys are awesome. Thank you for coming and listening. I really appreciate it. Nobody said bloody to look at. He inferred blood because Carbull said he looked disheveled or like he was in a fight. Okay, right. But there's reports that there was somebody that was walking down the road, right? That did have blood on them. There was somebody seen like walking down the road that did have blood on them. And the word on the street is that because that person just got done slaughtering a hog for Ron Logan. Now, whether that's true or not, I mean, that still remains to be seen, you know? But that's something that I heard through the grapevine, you know what I mean? Like during my little excursion to find stuff, you know? I also learned about, Ron Logan's mistress and the stealing of guns and her supposed to be in court on the 13th and missing court and getting slaps on the wrist and all kinds of crazy crap. Just like when they talk about these guys, the wolf pack, right? Nobody talks about the fact that, they beat the hell out of this dude, Josh Ward, and, they tried to leave him for dead. Eventually, he did die in an explosion, like a meth explosion or some ridiculousness like that. But nobody talks about the fact that, like, when that dude got away from them and they called the cops, like, there was a specific family that called the cops on the dude and a specific family that was renting a house to one of these people. Nobody is like thinking about any of all of this craziness that is happening. No one talks about it. I don't. And it just makes me more frustrated and frustrated. You know what makes me frustrated the most is that the people who should have been the forefront of this trial were lost. Abby and Libby were lost in the whole tumultuous time bomb that explodes. Yeah. Mullins, let's see the harvester video of BG walking on 300 and 357 in a blue coat, right? Yeah, the best he could do was a screenshot. Like, he screenshotted that and was like, yep, that's good. Yep, keep it moving, keep it pushing. I'm also wondering why, it was pushed to keep Holman away from the scene so long, because he says he called at 8:00 that morning, right? And he was told he didn't need no help. They was good. They could do that all by themselves. And then why is a retired gentleman calling you to let you know that this county is looking for a helicopter and that you might need to pique your interest? Oh my goodness. That's crazy. Does anybody, if I drop a link, does anybody just kind of want to come up here and chit chat? Because I feel like crazy, like talking to myself. Let's see. I'll drop a link. But I have like all of these different notebooks like filled with, crazy amounts of information. Nobody talks about nobody talks about a lot of these things. It's crazy. Maybe Ron Logan got that pic delivered by Elvis and it was him walking down the road. Do we know who the man walking down the street was? Was he identified in your research? Yes, but I can't say because it goes directly to the appellate and I don't want to ruin that. You know what I mean? I don't want to mess it up. Oh my God. Like, you understand what I'm saying, Jenny? Like, I feel bad. I don't want to say it. I really don't. But yes, I did find out the answer to my question. Yes, I did. Yeah, R&M, definitely. I'll be here. But yeah, so Yeah, I don't want to say because I don't want to I do not want to bring any like issues with appellate or anything like that at all whatsoever. Mess it up. How can you learn everything? Chippy, I can't. This is somebody's life on the line, buddy. I would love to. Um, so yeah. So then, you know, I was like re-going like over all of my notebooks, right? Like because I'm sitting here and I'm looking at notes that I took from like early on, you know, and it was funny because I had notated to myself, do you remember did anybody read Susan Hendricks' book? The Delphi book that she wrote, right? In her book, she talks about that she had this dream that the girls were murdered in a barn, you know? How come nobody ever talks about those pictures that were said to be of the Mears barns, right? Nobody ever talks about those pictures or the destruction of the barn or the other shed that was on Logan's property, right? Nobody talked about how PB missed the action since he was stuck in the cemetery, right? Right. Because wasn't it David Erskine's and um his I want to say it was his sister and her dude. I gotta find the names. I've got them written down here that were there, finding the the bodies, right? And then they talk about Drew Yoder showing up and Gacola, I want to say was his name. Yeah, the CPS building that wasn't taken down. They never talk about the small fire that was inside the CPS building. You know, I mean, hell, the people of Delphi wanted that CPS building to be like their visitor center. And they were supposed to talk to NDOT and do all of that back to back, you know, discussions, right? Like they're supposed to decide if they want to get them to let them keep the building. And of course, that did not happen, right? That never happened. Oh, my brain. Oh, nobody ever talks about like also, right? So the dudes, the Wolfpack dudes, right? How come nobody ever talks about the guys that got in trouble for almost beating that dude, right? Nobody ever talks about those people's defense attorneys were Nicholas McLeland, Stacy Diener, Curtis Fouts, and then this other guy named Mark Delgado. But nobody like is talking about the fact that Nick McLeland like went from being one of these guys' defense attorneys to the prosecutor on his case. You want to talk about ethical violations? There's one. There's a big one. You know. Um. Also, there is an order. Let's see. It's crazy. So yeah, high ginger snaps, high adjusted fate, Mar R, welcome in, welcome in. How many people do you know of that were at the trail, was listening to old podcasts at Abby's mom said about 50 visited the trails? There was a lot of people. Goodness. Because the number kept going bigger because I remember first hearing that there was like at least 20 people out at the trail and then, 50 or whatever. Jesus. There's a lot of podcasts too. A lot of them that talked about a lot of things. I mean, again, and we look at the different suspects that, first were on the scene, Paul Eder and you know, Gabe Ellis, the Gabe Ellis stuff, and him having that underage girl with him. Nobody, and the Keegan Klein thing. Oh, it really tweaks my melon that like he tried to play off the Keegan Klein thing so fucking smooth. Keegan Klein was in contact with the Anthony Shots profile. And let's not say that it was necessarily Keegan who was operating that particular profile then, right? But we know that at least 50 days before the murders is the first time that Anthony Shots liked Livy's stuff on social media. I know you want to know who is Eddie Moffat, but today is not that day, ladies. Okie dokie patroki. Yeah, it is a melon tweaker. But yeah. So I don't know. Like, I just keep looking at all of my notes as a totality, and I'm like, you know what I mean? There's so much. We ever figure out why Betsy's Fitbit data showed her walk in the third loop from 1:30 to 2, but Mullins' screenshot shows her car not arriving until 1:46 and leaving until 2:14? No, I never figured that one out either yet, guys. I'm still trying to figure it all out. It's crazy, just absolutely nutsy freaking bobo. Also, like, I guess like I was a little bit disappointed with the HTC interview, and I'll tell you why. I really used to enjoy Miss Lauren's content, right? Especially when she was on the Lori Vallow-Daybell case, because again, the more intricate, the better. I loved, how insightful the research was. It was very thought-provoking, and I feel like I've been let down when it comes to Delphi. Also, just to pass a message on to HTC, when you said you saw a podcaster getting a sticky note in the courtroom, sweetheart, that was not a podcaster. That was the defense investigator that received the sticky note. So, sorry. They wanted you to know that. Of course, there were several times where people said that, Rick Allen's daughter was one of the defense investigators in court. So, pretty funny, right? But yeah, just know that was not a podcaster that got that sticky note, honey. That was a defense investigator. Okay. Something else that somebody, like, people can get mad, get glad, either I don't know what to say. But when it comes to Erica, when Erica, like, she was really like overwhelmed, upset. She's been through the ringer, right? Been through the ringer. But remember, the first thing that she talked about, was that she was having some issues with litigation. And she's having problems with issues out of Lowell, Indiana. And I really found it interesting, that Holman said that was one of the areas that he worked, that he was familiar with, that, whatever. And she talked about police corruption. That's a big thing that she talked about. So, like, before y'all, like, go hard and crazy on her, really take to heart and listen to, like, what she had to say about all of that, I know that, like, her emotions, like, sometimes people allow their emotions to override their logic. But she knows what she's talking about. You know what I mean? I watched HTC in the beginning. She was normal. Somebody got to her. She went from unbiased to unwatchable overnight. I know, and it really, like, it drove me crazy. Kind of like, when I first came across murder sheets when they first came out, like, the Delphi case is not their first case to establish their ingrained relationship with Indiana State Police. I mean, we know about the Burger Chef murders, right? They were getting into that, investigating that. But I was really happy at the fact I was like, when they first came on the scene, I was like, bro, what better way to like cover a case than to have an attorney and a journalist? No, that went south. That went south so fast. So fast. Um, yeah. And I don't know. I have no idea what happened to her, like where she went. Like, I don't know. The dark side came for it. I have no words. Um, okay. So yeah, so I'm gonna get into more of my notes, I guess, because I know that it's, stupid for me to not go through it, I guess. So but yeah, I just wondered if Holman was aware of the familial ties between, Westfall, Lesenby, and Weber, when this whole point of trying to make the decision of who's going to take the front lead on this case was happening, right? Um, I also wanted to ask him, how soon after speaking to Richard Allen did you have a gut feeling that he was this responsible perpetrator, that he's the person, who did this? What in your gut made you think this is the guy? This is the guy, even though you have all of this evidence from before, showing that there are other individuals that are on the eye of proximity here, you know. Um, I also want to know, will the public be able to see the unedited version of your interrogation video, uh, or your accidental interrogation of Mr. Allen? Um, you know, I know that you claimed that the Miranda rights were not recorded and there's errors and technical difficulties, and it's working fine before, but then you go and it's not working, and that they emailed you to say that, oh man, hey, the recording's not working. you know I mean, if you weren't planning for this interview to happen, why did you take the laptop into the interview room? um you know Um, you also talked about, you guys were processing items that had been collected, um, and returned from testing. So, like, are you saying that you collected the items prior, like 13 days prior, like when you guys first talked to him? You know what I mean? Because I know that they were talking about preparing for this on September 16th, 2022. you know so, like, did you guys go and take stuff from there and then get stuff back, and then you just whatever, like, obviously you didn't get anything from his car because you called him to come get his vehicle. You called him to come get it. you know um I hope Holman never stops talking. He's digging himself deeper and deeper, right? I hope he keeps on talking. I find his tales of woe alluring. um so I also wanted to discuss about, a very telling statement that was made. He said that people know about fingerprints and that they wear clothing and, gloves to protect. And, people know about phone technology. So they know well enough to know that they leave their phone at home. Are you inferring that this individual knew enough to know to like protect touching anything with their fingerprints? you know um Because something that I have heard from the beginning, and I know that this is nutsy bobo crazy. People can be like, what? But I've come into contact with at least 4 different people throughout my journey of learning about this case. These people don't know one another. They have no tie to anybody, nothing. But one thing that I have heard over and over again from these people were 2 things. One thing I always heard was that somebody felt that there was a family member involved in some way, shape, or form in this. And the other thing was somebody kept inferring that there was a former law enforcement officer that was involved. And I keep asking, like, okay, so, then I hear him say a statement like this. When I think about crazy things. Like I saw this, I don't remember what the name of the documentary was, like years back, right? A couple years back at least. It was on Netflix, but it was the case of this woman, several ladies across the US who had been SA'd, right? And so they were like searching for this guy who was traveling, who was SAing women, and it took them quite a number of years to catch up to their perpetrator. And when they finally had caught up to their perpetrator, they found out that their perpetrator was an LE officer. Also, he had it was a crime scene handbook for dummies, right? So it was a training manual that they could buy online, right? So he had this training manual that went over how evidence was obtained, how evidence was processed, how, they could go through all of that. And he basically as he was committing his crime, he would make his victims clean themselves up, right? But it's crazy to think about that in that retrospect. I don't know. Sorry. Maybe that's just a crazy thought, but anyways. Hi, just welcome in. Dark Arts. Welcome in, guys. All eyes, welcome in. So that it would just, I don't know, and I noticed that Mr. Holman's nose kind of wiggles and flares whenever he's being dishonest. It's like one of his tells. Too bad we couldn't see his hands, because he fiddles with his hands and makes, different signs with his hands. And then something that I found really interesting that he talked about yesterday, he was throwing this fit about why wasn't the prosecution allowed to share a video of Richard Allen getting angry or being asked, about a polygraph. And he describes that Richard Allen is sitting on his bed and reading a Bible. And then all of a sudden he just japs out and just goes insane. You know how asinine that statement sounds? When have you ever known somebody to get angry while reading the Bible? Can you answer me that, Mr. Holman? When have you ever known somebody to just get angry and start acting cray-cray reading the Bible? And if they do, that means they got a demon and they need some holy water. Oh my goodness. And it's irrelevant. Exactly. Absolutely irrelevant. So yeah, I'm sorry, but then he wants to talk about the switch in the interview room being turned on and the realization that the interviews had been lost or recorded over in August of 2017. Listen, we're going to talk about this again, Mr. Holman, okay? Because I sat in the courtroom and I listened to Mr. Mullins say that the recording system that was installed at the Carroll County Jail was a fairly new system. He testified that the system held 6 terabytes of data. Bro, how are you recording over 6 terabytes of data from February to August? Do you guys have that much crime? You have a lot of crime. Sorry, but you know, if you got 6 terabytes, 6 terabytes, what are you doing? How is it going to record over 6 terabytes, Mr. Holman? Can you explain that to me, please? Please, I really want to know. And I know you claim not to be technically savvy enough to even know how to delete something, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows how to hit the delete button, bro. Everyone. Oh, sorry, guys. You know, I'm sure your wife won't be happy to know that you were walking around the damn courthouse hand in hand with Diener every day either. But, you know, burn on that one. So, I mean, and Mr. Holman claimed that he doesn't watch social media. He doesn't know those sides of things. But yeah, he was in constant contact with several creators. Several creators you were in contact with. Okay. Like, I don't get it. Like, people running back and forth. Oh man, I get to talk to Beto and Holman. That's so awesome. Blah, 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 blah. Because they had the inside track. Hell, even at the 3-day hearing, the day that I did not get in, you were stay steadily whispering in somebody's ear for him to push out the narrative. That you're steadily spitting in somebody's face that you know is not true. Jeez Louise, man. I just got to tell you, bro, you lie, your feet stink, you don't love Jesus. Try again. Oh, sorry, guys, but I'm so frustrated because he lies. He lies worse than anything. Like, I don't, you know? And I think that a frustrating part of this, you know, was the little smart aleck comment made about Rossi talking about, you know, to Judge Gold, you don't know this case. And with regards, while you're taking it out of context and weren't there, Rossi had every single solitary right to tell that woman, you don't know anything about this case. She hadn't bothered to read a filing. She hadn't bothered to care about anything. And yes, YouTubers were a main concern because the state was the one like giving those people the arsenal. Just, it doesn't make any logical sense, you know? Yeah, they were a large part of this because the state was giving things to Fig. They were giving stuff to Murder Sheets. They were giving stuff that was being forwarded from Mark Cohen. All of those people, and it was being forwarded and disseminated out into the world. But you don't want anybody to think about that. Yeah, and that was also after Rossi had asked for 15 additional days for trial and was yet denied once again those additional 15 days, which forced Rossi to forfeit the initial trial date. How about you get your shit together before you start running it? It makes me so angry to sit here and listen to all of this bullshit that has been sprinkled along the way. You want somebody to swallow a narrative of lies that you are just disseminating out. I mean, just, And I hope one day that you have to walk before God and you have to answer for all of these things that you've done because God don't like ugly. And I hope you burn for all of the things that you have done. I really do. Oh, sorry. I've held it in for so long. You know, I still think about the fact that, you know, not only was Brad Holder being discussed about as a viable suspect between Jay Abbott and Doug Carter in these emails going back and forth. They talk about going and interviewing Patrick Westfall and his son, Nick, you know, like all of these different things. Like, what in the world? No, what is it? You know? Oh, that's the other thing. He was talking about the polygraph thing. I gotta find it. Hold on. Because I Googled this when he was talking about usage of polygraph in court on his in his interview with Murder Sheets, right? He talks about how polygraphs can be you can use a polygraph as a stipulation in courts in the state of Indiana. And I was like, no way, right? Can you do that? And so when I Googled it, it said yes, polygraphs can be used as a stipulation in Indiana courts, but only under certain conditions. Written stipulation, the defendant, the prosecuting attorney, the defense attorney, and the judge must all agree in writing to allow the polygraph to be used in court. Court's discretion, the trial court has the discretion to decide whether to admit the polygraph results. Cross-examination, the opposing party has the right to cross-examine the polygraph examiner. But what was the point in bringing up the polygraphs and how a polygraph could be used in court? And I go back and I think about the fact that they talk about other people had taken polygraphs. Like, did Westfall and Holder take polygraphs? And if so, do you still have the results? Can they be used in court? Would that be something that could be used by the defense in building their case, as far as the appellate issues go, because even like the reports, they're like the recording system's broken. You're supposed to write a report from each individual that you go and interview and you have a interaction with. But you can't attach the report because the report's not there. Everybody knows that the reports are not there. Even in court, they talked about the very first ISP report that was submitted to the defense. There was another piece of paper that was stapled to that said report, but it was stapled on backwards. And that was done for like 242 pieces of documents, stuff stapled backwards on purpose, Yes, a polygraph conductor was killed with her daughter. The same polygraph examiner who examined Elvis Fields and Joyce Moffett, which was his sister and his other sister. Yeah, she died in a house fire. I believe it was ruled incendiary fire. So, she was also married to a judge, Jason. What was his last name? Jason Thompson. Yes. So, and the stupid thing, okay. So when he talks about Elvis Fields, I think the stupidest shit that I heard come out of his mouth was the inference that Elvis Fields was saying that if he spit on dirt and somebody picked it up and dropped it at the crime scene, that would infer his saliva making it to being on one of the girls. Can you back that up for me and re-say that? Because who in the world is going to spit on the ground, have somebody spit on the ground? Here, let me have you spit on the ground. You ain't going to say a word. I'm going to scoop this dirt up and I'm going to take it to a crime scene. You better shut your mouth. You better shut your mouth or your spit, it'll be all over the dirt, all around these girls. Who does that? Who says that like that? That was dumb. Ugh. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. I shouldn't be sorry for saying these things. You talked about going out to the prison and interviewing, inmates and stuff that you claimed that you didn't know that you had to go interview them in the first place. It was just divine intervention that told you to get up off your ass and go out to the prison to go and, interview all of these folks out there. Yeah. Because I remember hearing about that one, at court hearings too. The whole investigation is dumb. No jurors have spoken up so far that I know of. No one. And I would imagine that they wouldn't. Because I still think about those flyers that were disseminated through the neighborhoods in Allen County 2 days after the jury was sequestered. I would have absolutely no doubt at all whatsoever if one of those individuals that was on that jury was not one of the individuals who had received one of those flyers in their yard. You think they're going to tell the public? Hell no, they're not going to tell the fucking public. They're not going to tell the public what they did. All right, hold on one second. I got to put Min out. Okay, sorry about that. And so, by the way, while we're on the topic, and now everybody knows that Rick had a lawyer to begin with, I want to know, Jody, when is it that you're going to pull out those 2 filings that are on file that were filed by Kathy's attorney to begin with, that you guys have been withholding from the docket? When is that going to be put properly on the docket? And when is the world going to see that? I'd like for you to go ahead and, get that out there into the world, because you know it. There were 2 filed documents, 2 motions on behalf of Kathy's attorney that are missing from the court docket. We talk about the unlawful kidnapping of Richard Allen. That's for real, because Kathy Allen had legal guardianship of Rick. She's been denied Rick's medical records. She hasn't been given, she hasn't been given her rights to anything, and goodness. When they threw her husband in prison the way that they did, and they didn't respect the rights of Kathy, they violated Kathy's rights just as much as they violated Rick's, and just knowing that, he's been held, he was held, without an arraignment or a bond. I just, ugh. He was never, he hadn't been charged with murder, and they had been torturing him and drugging him, without ever charging him with murder within that 48-hour arraignment. When is all of that? When are these people going to have to pay the Pied Piper? When are they going to have to do it? Oh boy. Just for reference, watching Lauren at HTC, I think Holman had sent out pre-screened questions. I don't think she could as her own. Well, I would imagine not. What would have it looked like if she had just hit him with some surprise ass questions while he was on the damn camera all of a sudden? And why wasn't it done live? Why pre-record it? Why would you not ask these questions of this man live and just hit him with a quitter? Bam! It wouldn't look good. He had to have his narrative before he got on there. Period. I also think about when they talk about Todd Click, being at the police station, Rushville police station, when Brad Holder was questioned, and he was questioned by Lendler. I want to say the name was Lendler, and the guy, and she's saying, I don't remember. Somebody spoke for her. Nobody went and got that woman and brought her to the courts to say, I don't remember the consistency of the interview that we held with Mr. Holder. And, we didn't record that interview. None of that's another thing. All of these missing evidence or interviews, you see video, but you heard no sound is what they were saying. I know that I sat in court one day and I watched a video of Brad Holder, and all you could see was that you couldn't hear anything that was being discussed in the video. It's just him on video. Like, there's no talking, but he still contradicted himself. Yeah. And it just, so frustrating. So frustrating. Sorry. I've got so many different notes that I keep going through and I keep referring to. So yeah, in 2017, so in 2017, when the murders happened, Holman was in charge of he was in charge of all the district investigations for the Lafayette Post, and he had heard on the radio news, that this happened, this went down, the girls went missing. Hold on. Oh my gosh, I'm sitting here reading the chat responding, and I accidentally hit the mute button like a fool. I'm so sorry. I pulled an Ange. So yeah, Shibby says when debating someone, you must interrupt them, each gaslight untruth, and address it. If it is not, it floats into the ether as fact. I agree with that. Christy Sharp, did we ever get transcripts for the closed door meeting during the 3-day hearing? No, ma'am, we did not. But that was the meeting that they swiftly did their undercover arraignment stuff. Hold on, I have some notes about that too. Because I remember the day that happened, and I was like, holy guacamole. Like, it's too much. It's too much. No. Daba, get a lighter when Jerry talks like a blue angel. His breath will ignite. Oh my goodness. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. So yeah. So okay. Let's see. So also there's some other stuff that he talks about the unorthodox tips that they get that are submitted into the tip line. And I was just wondering, once this is all said and done, will all of the tips and emails be made available for the public to see, all of these different tips that came in, the unorthodox tips, right? Yes, it did happen later in August. The second closed arraign hearing happened in August. Yes, it was the same. It was the same day as the Ray Band thing. When they had it closed to the public or whatever, but that's when they went in and they did their secondary arraignment thing that day, that afternoon. Yeah, you don't think the tips would be? I wish they would, because I would love to like go through all of those like tips, and I wanted to hear like the unorthodox tips, like the Sasquatch living under the bridge. I remember when my husband and I went out there to go to the trail for the first time and to go check out the terrain and check out the crime scene. We were walking. We had finished, hiking through there and all of that stuff, and we were getting ready to leave. And we had parks over in the parking lot for the Freedom Bridge. And there was a guy who was walking past us and asked me if I found Bigfoot back there. So, yes, August 23rd. That's correct, all eyes. Can I expand on what I mean by arraignment? Yes. Yes, I can. Okay, so let me. Oh boy. Okay. So I'm sure that we have all listened to recently the New Year's revelation, I guess maybe is what we call it, that Mr. Osbrook was speaking about, right? So when Rick was arrested, he was held without an arraignment or a bond hearing, and you're supposed to have that done within like 48 hours, right? And they knew, like, because this is where they were doing the fuckery of moving him around, right? Like, and he went from, what was it? Carroll to White, from White to RDC. He was in RDC for a day, and then he went from RDC to, is it Wabash, Westville? Yeah, Westville. Like during that time, like they, oh my goodness, they did not do all this. Like when they denied, like he didn't have, I don't know how to word this. Like they completely did this all fucked off. They really did. This is separate from the initial hearing. So your bond hearing and your arraignment bond hearing would be a separate issue from your initial hearing. So when you go in for initial hearing, like they don't expect you to have an attorney right then and there. Normally, that's when they read your charges. And you get your attorney, blah, 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 but then you have, bond hearing and all that stuff. And this stuff was like completely like glossed over for him. And he was just shipped off to another place. Like no control, nobody to speak for him. Like if Rick had an attorney there, this whole thing could have had a stop put to it immediately. He would have never been taken and kicked off to the Department of Corrections had somebody been able to be there as the legal liaison and say, no, absolutely not. We're not going to allow this. We can't. Does that make any sense? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how to like get into the ins and outs of that. I just know that it's not right. They skipped his orientation and formal evals. He has a 20-minute intake and was on DOC video in a cell on 11/3. Yes, and that's another thing, all eyes, is that kind of bothers me. So when he got when he got transferred right over to Cass County to be held for trial, right? and he went straight back to the Department of Corrections. He should have been taken right back to RDC for a more thorough and more formal intake, because every time you go there, right? Like, well, if it's on the same case, I don't understand. Like, you would go out into population, you'd have to sit in intake for a certain amount of time, but they would pretty much like eject you right back out into general population. But they didn't do that this time. If he was only there for 20 minutes, they definitely didn't do all of like the normal ins and outs that they would have to for the processing, in RD, like into the Department of Corrections. But they moved him back really quickly. So I was thinking, I wonder if when Rick went to court, if they didn't just sign him out as a temporary sign out so that they could transfer him back quickly from the bed space. Like, instead of like dispersing him out, I hope that makes sense. So like they just like, instead of making him wait for a bed, right? Because after your sentence, depending upon the county that you're in, it can have it. There's 2 counties that run twice a week, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, to take people to the Department of Corrections. But other times, like if you get sentenced to the Department of Corrections, sometimes people have to wait anywhere for like a month to 2 before they're picked back up and they're taken back, right? Because it's all according to bed space, right? Just because you're sentenced to the Department of Corrections doesn't necessarily mean that they come and get you right away, right? So I'm wondering if they had like kind of like booked him out as a temporary to keep his bed space while he was going to trial. I don't know. And the fact that they didn't really do a thorough diagnostic and intake is strange to me. So very strange, But again, like I get frustrated when there's this insinuation, that this crime was committed with the intention of violating the girls, And what I find so crazy is like I've had conversations now with somebody who got to investigate stuff, and I know this may sound like a really strange question, right? But when I ask the question, like, as you're going through and you're looking, do you see anything nefarious, right? Because like the devices, they're like, there's nothing on his device. There's nothing, like no DNA. There's nothing on his device. Like this guy didn't even watch Bow Chicka Wow Wow. There was no evidence of that. Now, if this is somebody who's like into some sort of like interests like that, I mean, I guess, I don't know. Maybe it's normal. I mean, he's been married like 30 plus years, but a lot of men watch Bow Chicka Wow Wow, but he didn't. Does anybody else not find that a little bit weird? Anyone? And maybe I don't know. So yeah, I feel silly. Is R&M still here? Yeah, but there was absolutely none, which is crazy. You know what I mean? Because like as a grown man, like, men, do their thing. Like I don't think I don't think that there isn't a male species out there who isn't like doesn't watch that. Just like I think that there are females out there that watch that stuff, right? But I mean, I don't want to judge anybody, you know what I mean? But it's still like that doesn't strike you as like, damn, like, okay, well, if there wasn't anything like that, what was there? What what was it? I just it maybe I'm a weirdo, right? I maybe I'm a weirdo. I don't know. Um That's total BS. I'm married 20 years and do not watch. It's totally destructive to the soul and overall being. It's poison, dude. Stop acting like it's normal. I don't think it's necessarily normal for everyone, but I would think that a large majority do watch. I mean, I have to agree to disagree with you. I respect your thought, your opinion. Don't get me wrong, like, but I don't know. Um, and I'm not saying that men aren't like. I'm not saying that everybody does it, okay? But I would think that there would be a large portion that do, okay? Sorry, but I think so. Um, weak people, baby, but none of my friends do. It's one thing if you're addicted to it, but it's not healthy. I would have to agree. Okay. So 1 terabyte holds a lot of weird stuff. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you, Adrian. I appreciate that you know what I mean because, like, if yeah. So, um, it really is destructive, in my opinion. But just because we agree with our experiences, our observations, doesn't mean we're for it or whatever. It's true. 7 stars says depends if you're scared of your wife. Oh my goodness. Right. So yeah. Anyway, so we need to go back to my little notes here because I've got a lot more that I've just been, you know, yeah. Okay. And I'm just like a note person that really honestly, that's how I I process a lot of things through note taking and just questions that I've had for a long while. Um but yeah, so um and it really kind of like makes sense though, like when Holman was talking about how he got involved. He says he talked to Lesenby 8 in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. This Dave Kirking guy who was retired calls him and says, "Hey, they're requesting a um a helicopter and stuff." And he's like, says that he arrives between 11 and 11:30. And I was going back to my notes and I was thinking about, um, when they were talking about the photos that were leaked of the girls' clothes in the creek that was on Gavin Fish's YouTube channel, and he shares the timestamps um of the time that the picture was taken. I want to say that it was at like 11:13 and some change AM. So yeah. Um so that's interesting, because it he's getting there about 11:30. He said not too long after that he found out that the girls were found. It's, you know okay. um I really found it interesting that he talked about, Abby, the presentation of Abby, having her underwear on, but she had no socks on, but the shoes were put on her. um hey, Jer, welcome in. Depends upon how you take the teachings of which religion. I'm a born and bred Irish Catholic, and sex was a big guilt trip that led to a lot of abuse. I'm sorry to hear that. Um, I don't think that that should be used as a form of abuse. I think that it's a healthy and special enriching thing, but it there's it shouldn't be out there for everybody, but you know what I mean. Like, I guess, lady in the streets, whatever, in the sheets. I don't know. Um, I don't know. I think sex is healthy for people, but I don't think that it should be used as a form of abuse, in my opinion. Just saying. Um, so I'm still questioning how Abby would have gotten this phone and shoved it under her body. I mean, because we know that the phone was in the shoe and then it was shoved under Abby. I'm not understanding where this distinction of Abby was able to grab the phone and shove it under herself came from. I guess maybe like I would appreciate a little bit more context as to how that was decided upon, I guess. Um I also want to ask, when Holman said that he was, detaining Alan and things like that, he said that he was asking him questions, trying to fish information. I'm curious as to what the questions were that you considered to be phishing information, that were posed by Ricky. Um, it doesn't make sense to me, but you know, um, as far as the Keegan Klein narrative, um, does he want us to forget that ISP came in front of the public and said that this distinct connection between Calvin Klein, I'm sorry, Keegan Klein, um, in part, like it ended up leading to one of the largest CSAM investigations in the state of Indiana. Are we going to ignore that? How does that work? Also, some of these people that like you keep finding, like I keep finding connections to, and things of that nature. Um, some of these people, like the internet crimes against children, ICAC, right? Like the tip for Keegan Klein was gotten on ICAC. Um, I think about all of these different investigations that they had going on when it came to the sex crimes against children, uh, the project Safe Child, and there was another one project. I want to say it was called Project Perv. I have tabs for them, um, like with all of the different information. You know what I mean? Um, let's see. Alrighty then. So you remember Christine say the phone had their prints. I don't know if she said it had others. I don't either. Um, but yeah. Um, also, I still like have to question, like, why, when you're interviewing Richard Allen Holman, are you trying to coax him into establishing that he had loaned his firearm out to someone else? I don't understand that whole entire situation. And I'm really glad that he didn't take the polygraph, for you guys, to be honest, because I don't know what it was that you would have done with that, considering the comment that you made about stipulating polygraphs in court. Um, but then you talk about that, like, not everything will be out to the public. Not all angles of this investigation will be out to the public. You don't really want to put the cause of death or the motive out. into, because you're not comfortable releasing this out into the public hemisphere, but people have sat through the court filings and, you know, listened to all of this and seen this stuff. I gotta find this note that I have because, also this North paganism religion, I find it hard to believe that you didn't realize that there were a majority of there were a lot of law enforcement officers and military and things like that, and you're like, it's just a religion, but you're failing to, acknowledge the fact that these are groups that are involved in acts of terrorism that have formed together to use this religious sect as a front to cover their crimes. I don't know. Are you a member of this particular religion? Is this something that you partake in for yourself? Do you have any of these beliefs? I mean, I know it's a silly question, but are you a Freemason? You know? So yeah, there is that. Oh my goodness gracious. But yeah. You'll still never believe that Libby's iPhone 6S took that blurry video in the daylight. You know what's crazy about that video? Just watching what I did, like seeing what I saw. Like when Libby gets to the end, right? And she's standing there and the phone's just kind of like facing the ground and this person comes up to talk to her. Just thinking about it, just as I've sat and I had this, like, just thinking about what I saw in the video as a totality. That guy was pretty far back from her. Like, I don't know if that was necessarily the guy that was on the bridge who had caught up to her that quickly to go, because it's like that person was very close to her. I don't know. It's crazy to me. Like, I can't see in my mind's eye that guy would have been that fast to catch up to that spot, in my opinion. I don't know. So yeah, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like maybe I've addressed some of this stuff, not all of it. I mean, does anybody have any questions at all that they would like to ask or anything else? Yeah, Christy, he could have been at the end waiting for them very easily, and somebody had made a suggestion, we were talking about, could it have been that somebody was saying a name at some point? I don't know. Like I said, a lot of it, some of it was hard to hear. I just, so much. You know how it is, like when you sit here and you just think about it in your mind and your mind's running like a million miles a minute. And you're like, I just want to say everything on my mind. And there's just not enough time in the day. But what I did find really interesting last night was during the chat on R&M was the lady that came in and said that she used to work at the Packers plant, right? And she talked about those green bandanas. I thought that was super duper interesting. I have to wonder how many females worked at the Packers plant. The guy, Brian Phillips, that called in that threat to Packers. he was the one who drew up that drawing of the guy on the bridge with the flames that was around it. He sent it to the journalist or whatever, like, and they did take a pair of boots. Remember, they did a search over at the plant. They took a pair of boots or whatever, you know. I still think about all of that. Um, I think about like in the early days, when there was a live stream that had Julie Melvin and Noe and Anthony Greeno, and Julie was talking about, the collection of evidence from the crime scene and how somebody had sat it on top of a car and like drove off, and they had to go back and get pieces of like evidence. Like, I don't know, so much food for thought. Um, it's just, I don't know, crazy. Freemason secret society are global and travel the world to meet to this day, even on the internet. We don't know what goes on during those meetings. Odinists are all over social media. They are. They are. But what's crazy is I was watching this really strange video the other day because, they talk about satanic and occultic practice. And I don't know if people are really familiarized with how, like, that alternative belief in practice is like very big here in this state. Okay. It's huge. And I was watching this guy who was saying that like they have like, hold on, what was it? He's one of those. Got to find the note for it because it was absolutely insane. But what was crazy is that it's like, okay, so like they're like satanic practices, like sectors, and they have like the high priest, right? Like, how they have the high priest that do the spells and things like that, right? And they say that there are so many across the United States at one time that they go and they do spells, and they're connected to Freemasons, and they're connected to like different groups like that. But he was talking about like sometimes these sects that break off into the different organized crime groups. He said that if they have the name um, Diablo in them, that like there are satanic cults that are criminal, that are involved in criminal organizations. So their different covens break off into separate sects. Like some of the sects would be like involved in drug trafficking, for example, or another sect would be involved with child exploitation, child trafficking, things of that nature. I don't know. Masons do not allow women to join as opposed to the amount of Freya and Odinism. But what about the Eastern Star? I mean, the Eastern Star is a female version of that, is it not? You know? Um, I also had some questions about exactly how the Orion program worked. When Holman was talking about how sometimes there would be tips that would be uploaded, but tips that were like would not cross reference with one another. Is that because they weren't using the program right? Like, is that normal? Is that something that normally happens? Unruly. Hi, everyone. I am new to the channel and so glad I found you. One thing that's been bothering me is the vertical slashes on the girls' throats instead of horizontal ones. Isn't this unusual? Mm. I'm not really sure how to answer that question. I'm not. I just I would rather I would like to have a medical professional really go over that with us, honestly. Um, the program does it automatically, all I so why is he talking about their problems with these tips? Like, why wouldn't it cross-reference those tips or the names or the aliases? Doesn't make sense. Um, Same question. I've been wondering what fueled the arson at Flora. What chemical was used? But if you've looked into this from every angle, just a cobweb of criminal atrocities. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Um, Orion would have flagged 50 key words in RA's statement. Huh. It would have. And then what? It spits out to tell him to go question him. Holman said that Orion was getting all clogged up on account of all the tips. That's a lot. I don't, I just, I'm so, my brain is broken for that situation. Like, why did Kathy Shank have the clearance to even be using Orion or uploading anything to Orion at all? I don't, I don't understand that. Mar, what a liar. Who's the liar? My R. Mar. Like Prism, they enter everything and then it's BS. Right. It's BS that the tip got lost. Exactly. So would that have been somebody like physically withholding that tip from going in there? Hi, woman. Welcome. So good to see you, beautiful. Um, ooh, Adrian, that's a good notion. It could have been a meth fire as they're difficult to put out because of the chemicals, right? Crazy, crazy. So yeah, like I kind of went on my little soapbox rant. I know I had so much more in my mind just going over everything. And I was so frustrated with the fact that Holman's like, well, it's the defense that was painting this picture and doing all of this stuff and that's just not true and I don't understand. Like I was there. I listened to it. So how can you tell me that I didn't hear what I heard? I don't get that. And I'm sure that, you know, um other individuals that were there and listened and experienced this, they're probably feeling the same exact way, you know, the same exact way. Um, I don't like being gaslit. I don't like being told that, I have no idea what I'm talking about because I'm pretty much, you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes. I was there. I heard it. I saw it. Um, and you're not going to change my mind on that. In no way, shape, or form. Um, so yeah, I don't know, but yes. Um, so I guess I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna jump off here. Thank you guys so much for coming and listening. I appreciate it so much. If anybody has any thoughts, please feel free to leave them in the comment section so that we can have uh keep the chit chat going and forwarded. I am working on trying to get some stuff lined out to do another segment with Christine. Um, and don't like, we've had a lot of questions come in. There's still a lot of things that have been happening. I know that we wanted to take some time to kind of figure out how we were going to go ahead and start maneuvering through the task of having our discussions and stuff. And I know that, you know, there's so much going on. Um, Braun, late to the party. Hi, and buddy. Sorry you're late. I hope you watched the replay. But yeah, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Again, I look forward to speaking with you guys in the comments. And I hope that you have a blessed and beautiful Saturday afternoon. Bye. Oh boy.